He can't be far. That was the first thing I heard. A man's voice, rough, angry, echoing through the rain. Then the sound of boots, splashing closer and closer. I held my son tighter, his tiny arms locked around my neck. He was crying, but I couldn't stop to comfort him. Not now. My other hand was on my stomach, my belly heavy, aching, and every step felt like my body was about to give up. But I kept running. The rain was pouring so hard it burned when it hit my skin. The streetlights were blurry, everything just gray and wet and endless. Leen. That voice again. Mr. Vaughn. He laughed behind me. You'll pay Omega. If not with money, then with yourself. My breath caught. I didn't even have the strength to scream back. I just ran. I ran until my legs went numb. And then, I slipped. I hit the ground hard. Pain shot up my arm. I curled around my son before I even thought about it. My palms scraped against the road. I could feel blood mixing with rain. My boy whimpered, "Papa." "I'm okay," I whispered. I wasn't. "Papa's okay." I tried to stand, but the world spun. My vision blurred. And then, headlights. Blinding, white, cutting through the rain. A car stopped, right in front of me. So close I could feel the heat from the engine. For a second, I thought that was it. Maybe fate wanted to finish the job. But the door opened, and he stepped out. A tall man, dressed in black. Calm, steady, like the storm didn't exist for him. Rain rolled down his face, but his eyes, they didn't move away from me. Not even once. Behind him, Vaughn's men slowed down. "That's my debtor," Vaughn shouted. "Get out of the way." The man didn't move. He looked at me for a long second, then turned to them, voice deep, quiet. "You mean this man? The one you're chasing like an animal?" "Mind your business," Vaughn barked. The man's expression didn't change. He just said, almost softly, "Touch him, and you'll regret breathing." I don't know what it was about the way he said it. Calm, not loud, not angry, but everyone froze. Even the rain felt quieter. No one spoke. No one dared move. He took a step forward, the sound of his boots against the wet road the only thing I could hear. And for the first time that night, I stopped shaking. Because I could tell, whoever he was, people didn't cross him. Vaughn spat on the ground, muttered something, and turned away. His men followed, disappearing into the dark. And suddenly it was just quiet. I stayed there, on the ground, holding my son. My body trembled from cold and fear, and something else I didn't understand. He walked over slowly and crouched in front of me. "Can you stand?" he asked. I tried. My legs wouldn't move. He didn't wait for an answer, just lifted me up, easily, like I weighed nothing. I panicked for a second, but his arms were firm, careful. Not rough. Not cruel. Just steady. He carried me to the car. My son clung to me, staring up at him with wide eyes, silent now. The door closed, shutting out the storm. Inside, it was warm. Too warm. My heart was still racing. I finally found my voice. "Who are you?" He looked out the window instead of at me. "Someone who doesn't like seeing people hunted," he said quietly. And that was it. No name. No explanation. Just that. I watched his reflection in the window as the car started moving. Strong jaw. Sharp eyes. Completely unreadable. For the first time in so long, I wasn't running anymore. I didn't know if I was safe, but I knew something had changed. That night, I didn't even know his name. When I woke up, it was quiet. Too quiet. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. The sheets were soft, warm. The ceiling wasn't cracked. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something expensive. Then I heard it, soft breathing beside me. My son, curled up on the bed, holding my arm. Still asleep. Safe. That's when it hit me. Last night. The rain. The chase. And him. Cale. I didn't know his name then, but I knew it now. I'd heard it earlier, whispered by someone outside the room. Mr. Cale. The man who stopped Vaughn. The man who pulled me out of the street like I mattered. My hands trembled as I touched my stomach. The baby kicked gently, alive. Still with me. I exhaled, half in relief, half in disbelief. The door opened quietly. He was there. Cale. Dark shirt, sleeves rolled, quiet eyes. He leaned on the doorframe for a second before walking in, slow and composed. "You're awake," he said, voice low even. "Good." I didn't know what to say. I just stared. He set a tray down, soup, bread, and something that smelled comforting in a way I hadn't felt in months. "You're safe here," he said, straightening up. "They won't find you again." I swallowed. My voice came out smaller than I meant. Why did you help me? He didn't look at me when he answered. Because I could. That was all. No kindness in his tone, but no cruelty either. Just truth. He turned to leave, but I stopped him. Wait, I said, clutching the blanket. My debt. Vaughn said. It's gone, he said flatly. Paid. My heart skipped. Paid. How? He cut in. You don't need to worry about that anymore. But that only made me worry more. Why would a stranger pay for me? For my life. When he left, I waited until his footsteps faded before I slid out of bed and peeked through the curtains. The view outside made me dizzy. Trees. Hills. Miles of nothing. Wherever this was, it was far from the city. Far from anyone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the storm, even though it was gone. My son slept peacefully beside me, but I couldn't stop thinking. What did he want from me? The next morning, I heard voices downstairs, muffled but sharp. I moved quietly, careful not to wake the boy, and followed the sound. Cale was in what looked like a study, talking on the phone. His voice was calm, but there was tension beneath it. No, I said no, he said. You can tell father I'm not interested. A pause. Then, quieter, almost tired. I don't need a wife to prove anything. My chest tightened. I shouldn't be listening, but I couldn't move. He exhaled long and low. I've already got someone staying here. That's all you need to know. I froze. Someone staying here. He meant me. He ended the call and turned slightly, and I realized he'd known I was there the whole time. His gaze met mine. You shouldn't sneak around, he said softly. It's bad for your heart. I opened my mouth to explain, but nothing came out. He just looked at me for a moment, then walked past me like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. That night, I sat by the window after everyone had gone quiet. The moonlight touched the edges of the bed. My son's small breaths filled the silence. I thought about running again, taking him and leaving before Cale changed his mind. I even packed a small bag. I made it to the door, my hand on the knob, when his voice came from behind me. If you step outside tonight, he said, calm, quiet, but cutting right through me. They'll find you again. I froze. He was standing in the dark hallway, one hand in his pocket, eyes glinting faintly in the dim light. Is that what you want? He asked. My heart pounded. Why are you doing this? I whispered. You don't even know me. He stepped closer, slowly, like he didn't want to scare me. But everything about him was made of control, strength, danger. His voice dropped. I don't need to know you've been hurt enough. He stopped right in front of me. For a second, I thought he'd touch me. He didn't. He just looked at me, really looked, like he was searching for something behind my eyes. Stay, he said finally. At least until the storm ends. But his voice, it didn't sound like a request. It sounded like a command wrapped in care. I didn't move, didn't answer. And maybe he saw that as a yes, because he turned and walked away. I closed the door again, trembling, not from fear this time, but from something I couldn't name. Days passed. Quietly. Carefully. Cale didn't talk much, but he noticed everything. If I looked cold, the fire was already lit. If I skipped a meal, he'd appear with something warm, silent, not meeting my eyes. He didn't ask questions. He didn't touch me. But I could feel his presence everywhere, steady, unshakable, like he was watching over me even when I couldn't see him. Then one morning, he got another call. I was in the hall, and I heard enough to know it was his mother. Her voice carried even through the phone. Cale, she's perfect for you. The engagement dinner is already planned. His tone stayed calm. I told you I'm not marrying her. You don't have a choice, she snapped. You're the heir. The family needs stability. If you don't have someone by next week, your father will decide for you. Silence. Then Cale said something that made my heart stop. I already have someone. He ended the call before she could reply. The silence stretched between us. He turned his head slightly, eyes finding me in the hall. You were listening again, he said quietly. Not angry, just knowing. I opened my mouth, but words failed. He walked over, slow, deliberate. I meant what I said, he murmured. If they think I'm with someone, they'll leave me alone. For now. I felt my stomach twist. You mean you'll use me? He didn't flinch. If that's what it takes to keep you safe, yes. I shook my head, tears stinging. That's not safety, Cale. That's a lie. He looked down at me, voice lower. Maybe. But sometimes lies keep people alive. I couldn't argue. Because I remembered the look in Vaughn's eyes. The way danger smelled like rain and blood. Still, something inside me broke a little that night. Because I realized this man, this stranger, wasn't saving me out of kindness. He was saving me because he needed something too. I lay awake for hours after that, watching the shadows crawl across the room, listening to my son's breathing, wondering which was worse, being chased or being kept. And yet, when the wind howled outside and thunder rolled across the hills, I didn't move closer to the door. I stayed, because even if his protection felt like a cage, it was the first one that ever felt warm. The storm came back 3 nights later. Louder this time, wilder, like the sky itself had been waiting for something to break. I couldn't sleep. Every thunderclap sounded like footsteps coming closer. Every flash of lightning painted the room white, then swallowed it in darkness again. My son was asleep, his small hand resting against my arm. I stared at his face and thought, I've been running for so long. Running from debt, from shame, from the kind of love that only hurt. And now here I was, in a stranger's house. A man who spoke in silences, who watched me like he already knew all my fears. Cale. I didn't understand him, and maybe that's what scared me the most. He was too calm, too sure, too dangerous in the way quiet men are, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be obeyed. The wind howled through the trees outside. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a car engine. At first, I thought it was the storm playing tricks on me. But then another sound. Tires. Gravel. Clothes. I sat up. The engine stopped. My chest went cold. Cale, I whispered under my breath. I didn't even know if he could hear me from across the house. My heart was already racing. I got out of bed carefully, not to wake my son, and slipped into the hallway. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The house fell into darkness. And in that darkness, I heard the faint echo of a door creaking open. No. I turned to grab my son, but Cale was already there at the end of the corridor, flashlight in hand, coat thrown over his shoulders. His face was half in shadow, half in light. Calm. Controlled. Take him upstairs, he said, voice steady, quiet. Cale, what's happening? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes told me everything. He knew this was coming. Lock the door, he said again. His tone left no room for argument. I scooped my son into my arms and ran up the stairs, my heart in my throat. From the top, I could hear voices, rough, familiar. Mr. Vaughn, and more men with him. You think you can hide him from me? Vaughn's voice bellowed through the hall. You think your money makes you untouchable? Cale's reply was quiet. Too quiet. You should have stayed away. Then a sound, a crash, sharp and violent, and I flinched, clutching my son tighter. Downstairs, thunder and chaos blended together. The sound of furniture breaking, the dull thud of a body hitting the floor, someone gasping for breath. Then silence. Long, heavy. Endless. I waited. Counted seconds. Then minutes. Nothing. Finally, I moved. My body acted before my brain caught up. I put my son down gently, whispered, "Stay here," and went downstairs barefoot. The air smelled like rain and fear. A table was overturned. Glass scattered across the floor like fallen stars. And then I saw them. Cale stood in the center of the room, chest rising and falling slowly, one hand bloodied. Vaughn lay against the wall, coughing, face swollen, bruised, broken. Cale looked like a storm wearing human skin. "You're right," he said, voice low, dangerous. "I can't protect him forever." He grabbed Vaughn by the collar, forcing him to look up. His next words came out like thunder itself. "Because soon, he won't belong to anyone but himself." Vaughn spat blood, eyes wide. "You think he's yours now? Is that it?" Cale's jaw flexed. "No, I think he's his own." Then he let him fall. Vaughn crawled to his feet, muttering curses, and stumbled out into the storm, limping, broken. The front door slammed shut behind him. And then there was only Cale, standing in the quiet ruin he'd created. I didn't move, didn't breathe. He turned his head slowly, his gaze finding me across the room. His voice softened. "Leen." I could barely whisper. "You should have let me go." He took a step toward me. "You're shaking," he said softly. "I told you," I said, my throat burning. "I bring trouble. You could have been killed." Cale's expression didn't change. "I've survived worse." "Why?" I demanded. "Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything." He stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, the faint smell of rain and iron clinging to his clothes. "I told you once," he said quietly. "You don't need to understand my reasons." "That's not enough," I whispered. "Not anymore." Something flickered in his eyes. "I don't save people," he said finally. I never have. But that night, when I saw you running. He paused, his jaw tightening. Something in me just refused to look away. The words hit deeper than I wanted them to. And before I could speak, he lifted a hand, slow and careful, touching the side of my face. His fingers were warm, rough, real. "Don't cry," he murmured. I hadn't realized I was. My tears mixed with the rain still clinging to his skin. I wanted to step back, but I didn't, because for the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like distance. It felt like understanding. Behind him, lightning flashed again, throwing his shadow across the wall, large, unshakable, constant. He dropped his hand, exhaled slowly. "You and your son should stay here. At least until you can start over." Start over. The words tasted impossible. What does that even mean for someone like me? I asked. "I have nothing left." He looked at me for a long moment. "Then I'll give you something." I laughed, a hollow, trembling sound. "What could you possibly give me?" His answer was quiet. "Peace." For a second, everything in me broke. The fear, the pride, the anger. All of it cracked under the weight of that one word. Peace. I didn't even remember what that felt like. He turned away then, maybe to give me space, maybe because if he stayed, he'd say something neither of us were ready to hear. The next few days passed in a strange calm. No calls, no threats, just quiet mornings and soft evenings. Cale went back to his routines. Phone calls, business meetings, that air of quiet control he wore like armor. But something had shifted between us. Every time our eyes met, the air changed. Every silence meant more. He'd walk into a room, and my heartbeat would stutter. He'd pour coffee and say nothing, but the way he'd glance at my hands, small things, unnoticed things, made it feel like we were both pretending not to feel something already alive between us. One morning, I found him outside in the garden, standing by the railing with a cup of coffee. The sky was still gray, the storm just a memory now. He didn't turn when he spoke. "My mother called again," he said quietly. I hesitated. "And?" "She said the family dinner is this weekend. They still expect me to bring someone." I swallowed. "You could tell them the truth." He smiled, a small, tired smile. "The truth doesn't work in my world." He finally looked at me, eyes unreadable. "Would you come with me?" The question hit like a punch to the chest. "Cale, I know," he said. "You don't owe me anything. But if you come, they'll leave me alone. And you'll be safe under my name until this is over." Until this is over. Like everything was temporary. Like I wasn't already tangled in his world. I looked down. "And what happens after?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was soft. "After, you'll leave if you want. I won't stop you." The words should have felt like freedom. But they didn't. That night, as I watched him from the hallway, Cale reading by the fire, the faint glow touching the edges of his face, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to leave. Not anymore. I wanted to know what it would feel like to stay. To stop running. To stop pretending I wasn't falling. The next evening, he drove us to the city. His world looked nothing like mine. Sharp suits, quiet power, eyes that judged before they spoke. I stayed close to him, one hand on my belly, the other holding my son's. Cale's hand brushed against mine once, briefly, just enough to steady me. It was nothing, but it was everything. The dinner was a blur of light and noise. His parents, elegant, distant, looked at me with polite confusion. "This is," his mother began. "My partner," Cale said simply, his hand settling gently against the small of my back. "Leen." I almost forgot to breathe. The word partner hung in the air like something sacred and dangerous at the same time. His father's jaw tightened. "She's." Cale cut him off. "He's under my care. That's all that matters." No one dared argue. Because Cale's tone didn't invite argument, it ended them. When the night finally ended, and the car door shut behind us, I felt like I'd been holding my breath for hours. Cale drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel, city lights flickering over his face. I turned to him. "You didn't have to do that." He kept his eyes on the road. "Yes, I did." "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly. "Because if I let them decide who I should love, they'd never understand that love doesn't always make sense." My heart stuttered. I wanted to speak, but no words came. When we got home, he parked, turned off the engine, and sat there for a long moment before he said, "You can go inside first." But I didn't move. "I don't understand you," I whispered. He turned his head, eyes catching the faint light. "You don't need to." "But I want to." That broke something in him. He looked away, exhaled, then murmured, "I'm not a good man, Leen." I do terrible things for people who deserve worse. I've hurt people. But the night I saw you, bleeding, terrified, protecting your child, I remembered what it was like to want to save something instead of destroy it. The words hung between us, raw and honest and heavy. Then softer. So no, you're not my burden. You're the first thing that's made me feel human again. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full. Alive. Like both of us were too afraid to breathe in case it shattered. Finally, I spoke. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because I'll start believing them. He smiled, barely there. Maybe that's the point. The days that followed blurred together. Quiet mornings, slow glances, the storm finally gone. The house felt different. Warmer. Lived in. My son laughed again. The baby kicked stronger. And Cale, the man who had once been all shadow and silence, started to let the light touch him too. But every story has an ending. And ours came quietly. One afternoon, while hanging laundry outside, I looked up and saw him watching me from the doorway. Arms crossed, eyes softer than I'd ever seen. He walked over, stopping just close enough for our hands to almost touch. You've changed this place, he said. You've changed me. I smiled faintly. That's not possible. It is, he said. You made it feel like home. He hesitated. Then slowly he reached out, his hand brushing mine, not claiming, not demanding. Just asking. For the first time, I didn't pull away. We stood there in silence, the wind tugging at the trees, the world calm for once. And maybe that's why I finally said it. The thing I'd been holding back since the night I fell. Cale, I whispered. I'm tired of running. He looked at me, really looked, and in that gaze was every unspoken thing we'd never dared say out loud. You don't have to run anymore, he said softly. Not from me. Then, with a small, broken smile, he added, I thought I was the one protecting you, but maybe, all this time, you were the one saving me. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. But when his forehead touched mine, and the world went still, it felt like the storm that had started everything had finally come home to rest. And that's when I knew. I hadn't been running from danger. I'd been running toward him.